Hello and good afternoon and welcome to MOS Live, everyone. Today we're talking with Museum of Science educators from the Live Animal Center all about misunderstood animals. My name is Emily, my pronouns are she, her, and I'll be keeping an eye out for all of your questions today. Thank you for those of you who are tuning in on Facebook or YouTube, but please note that we are not able to share your comments with our educators. For everyone here on Zoom, just press the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit your questions. Don't forget to include your name and age if you'd like a shout out. If you'd like to see captions, you can click on the closed captions button at the bottom of your screen and select show captions. I would now like to invite my first museum educator and animal friend to introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Corey, and I am the invertebrate keeper here at the Museum of Science. And also here with us today is Liz, our assistant curator of our Live Animal Center. So for our first misunderstood animal, I think is probably one that you all would immediately think of when you think of kind of a gross animal, and that is our cockroach. So this is a giant cave cockroach. So what makes these guys so misunderstood is we grow up thinking cockroaches are gross, they're pests, they're disgusting, but that is so not true. It is only a very small percentage of species of cockroaches that we would consider a pest, but cockroaches are so important to our environment. They are scavengers or detritivores, so they are breaking down a lot of organic material and keeping our planet super clean, which is so important. If we didn't have cockroaches, there are some ecosystems that would completely collapse because they are such a vital part of our ecosystem, not only for cleaning, but they also make a really good food for other animals. So a little bit about giant cave cockroaches. These guys can be found in Central and South America. And with our cave cockroaches here, they break down organic matter, fruits and vegetables and plant material, but these guys also have a very, very favorite, and it is bat guano, and that is bat poop. These guys love bat poop. And can you imagine if our giant cave cockroaches were not in caves to clean up all the bat poop? What would happen with all the bat poop? It would just pile up and pile up and pile up. So thank goodness these guys are here to help clean up our planet. So cave cockroaches live for about 2 years, which is a little shorter than, let's say, our Madagascar hissing cockroaches, which they live, 5 to 10 years. Giant cave cockroaches can also fly. So you can kind of see on the back, Liz is kind of showing you a good view from the side. They have some nice wings, and those wings really help them if they're up high in a cave or on a log and they fall. It helps them glide down. There hasn't been a lot of observation of these guys just taking off to fly, like to migrate or to move to other places. They usually walk to get there. So I'm going to turn it over and see if we have any questions about probably our number one misunderstood animal.
We don't have any questions yet, but I would like to know, I see some things on its face moving around a lot. Can you describe what it's doing?
Yeah, that is such a great observation. So those are antennae, and those antennae are telling our cockroach what's going on. So in general, cockroaches are nocturnal animals. So that means they're active during the nighttime and they sleep during the daytime. So their eyesight isn't as good as ours. So they use those antennas to smell their environment around them, really check out what's going on. So they're going crazy right now because they're smelling Liz. And Liz is not somebody whose hand is normally in with our cockroaches throughout the whole day. So this is a great chance for our cockroaches to smell something new and check out new animals, because Liz also works with different animals. So she has all those smells on her hand as well. With our giant cave cockroaches, it's a little hard to tell the difference between the males and the females. So right now, I believe Liz is holding our larger one, which is our female. They usually are about 3.5 inches, and our male is a little bit shorter at just 3 inches. These guys will also release a smell when they feel scared or threatened. And I was trying to describe it to Liz earlier. It's Not a great smell, but it's not the worst smell like a skunk or anything. But it definitely makes you very aware that the cockroaches are there. And I probably wouldn't want to eat one if it was making that gross smell.
Thank you. Darlene asks if the pattern on its back is significant.
That is such a great question. So the pattern on its back doesn't really play a huge role except for camouflage, kind of blending in with its surroundings. But what's really cool about these guys, and I actually have a picture because it's going to be lit. It's going to be hard for Liz to show you exactly what we have here, but our cave cockroaches are super cool because they actually have a secret pattern on the back of their wings that looks like a smiley face. We have our two eyes and we have a little U right there. And so I think it looks like a smiley face, which is so cool. But that doesn't really help them. Oh, perfect. Liz is giving us a nice shot of their back there. But they really want to blend in with leaf material and, in the walls of caves as well. That's such a great question.
All right, I know we have lots of animal friends to see today, so maybe just one or two more questions.
Perfect.
Beatrice asks, age 3, what eats the cockroach?
Such a good question. Pretty much birds are going to be a big one, but really, snakes, lizards, reptiles, amphibians, kind of anything that can get their hands that's a carnivore or an omnivore will try to eat these guys because they're just a nice little protein snack. Cockroaches are really great for any carnivore's diet. That is such a great question.
And then we have one more that asks, what are the furry looking legs or antenna underneath its chin?
That is a great question. So those are actually part of our cockroach's mouth. So that helps the cockroach figure out where the food is. Because again, their eyes are towards the top of their head. So it's a little hard for them to see what's below their chin. So it's kind of like if you couldn't move your chin to look down and you wanted to know what was going on underneath you, they have those feelers underneath that help them find and smell where their food is. So that way they can start eating it. That was such a great observation.
Great. Thank you so much. I know I didn't get to all of your questions, but you also definitely want to see the other animals. So let's move on to our next animal. And I'm going to share my screen so you folks can take a picture of some facts so you can look up this animal again later if you would like to. And go ahead and let me know when our next friend is ready.
All right, our next animal is about to make its appearance. Now, if I say misunderstood animal, I'm sure this one comes to mind for a lot of people. Snakes are very misunderstood animals. Now, this particular snake is called a black rat snake. Now, snakes definitely have a bad reputation, kind of like those cockroaches Corey was talking about. So a lot of times with snakes, people are afraid of them. It's a very common animal fear. Often I've asked people why they're so afraid of snakes. The most popular reasons people give me, one, people think they're really slimy and disgusting. That's actually something not true about snakes. You might think they're disgusting, but they are not slimy at all. Snakes are very shiny. Their scales are made of a special material called keratin. It's the same stuff that makes up your fingernails and your hair. So they are very shiny, especially under bright lights, but they're completely dry. If you guys don't believe me, notice how the snake isn't leaving slime behind as it moves around on Corey's hands and arms. Her hands are completely dry. So that's one common reason why people say they're afraid of snakes. Another one is that they bite. Now, I will never tell you that this snake does not bite. She has a mouth, she has teeth, she is definitely capable of biting. People have this idea that snakes just go around biting things. Now that's not really going to happen. Snakes in the wild, if you approach them and they're frightened, they're going to first try to get away. That is the first thing they're going to try to do. If they do get cornered and they feel really afraid, they definitely might bite. Pretty much any animal that gets cornered like that is going to bite. So I don't know if it's really fair to say you're afraid of snakes because they bite. Maybe you then would have to be afraid of all animals. So that's the second reason people often give why they're afraid of snakes. The third one I often hear is they are afraid snakes are going to be venomous. Now, there certainly are some venomous snakes out there. Altogether, there are about 3,600 species of snakes, lots of different kinds of snakes. Only about 600 are venomous. That's really not that many, although it might still seem like a lot. To break that down even further, of those 600 venomous snake species, only about 200 are capable of severely injuring or killing a human. So that's a pretty small percentage of all the different kinds of snakes out there. Now, those are kind of the most popular reasons people give as to why they're afraid of snakes. But really, as long as you just appreciate snakes from a distance in the wild, I do not recommend picking up wild snakes. Wild snakes are going to be more frightened than this one that's been handled for her entire lifetime, and they're not going to behave quite this nicely. But as long as you just appreciate them from a distance, snakes are more than happy to mind their own business. Actually, we should appreciate snakes. They eat a lot of pest animals. They're good predators, good carnivores. So they eat things like rats and mice, and they really help keep rodent populations under control. So you should appreciate snakes. Now, I said this was a black rat snake. They are native to New England. They're actually the largest snake you can find in Massachusetts. They are known to get up to 6 feet long. This one's probably a little over 5 feet in length, if you could picture her completely stretched out. They're also really good climbers. That probably doesn't surprise you guys. You see this snake pretty much using Corey's arm as a tree branch. So they are really good climbers, and you find them up in trees most often in their habitats. Now, I'm sure this has already opened up some questions, so why don't I take some of those?
Yes, thank you. Miss Lanigan's pre-K class asks, where can you find the snake in the world beyond New England that you mentioned?
No, that's great. They are native to a lot of central and eastern parts of the United States. So a lot along the eastern coast of the US, as far down into places like Florida. So pretty much all along that coast. They are relatively common. Some areas, their numbers are doing better than others. Actually, Massachusetts is an area where their numbers are not great. They're actually technically listed as endangered within the state of Massachusetts. But other parts of that large range, their numbers are doing better.
And we have a couple of questions about if the snake is poisonous or venomous.
So I did mention venomous snakes, that there are about 600 of the 3,600 species of snakes. This is an example of a non-venomous snake. Corey is quite brave with animals, but she wouldn't hold a venomous snake in her bare hands. This snake is a constrictor. So snakes that kill their prey either use that venom, like those snakes I kind of mentioned, or they're constrictors, like this snake right here. Usually constrictors, people think of boas, pythons, but lots of different snakes are also constrictors, including rat snakes. So this snake definitely has no venom.
And a kind of related question, Elizabeth asks, why do snakes eat small food even though they're big?
So snakes can eat larger food than the size of their head, which I always think is pretty impressive. But they have to be able to eat that food whole. So snakes have teeth. They're very, very sharp. They're very, very pointy. They actually point slightly backwards into the snake's throat. Their teeth are designed for grabbing, but not designed for chewing. So they can't take a bite out of a bigger animal. They have to be able to eat that animal whole. That's kind of just the way their mouths and their jaws work. So if you look at the snake's head, it can eat something 2 to 3 times the size of that head. The jaw is very flexible, so they are able to stretch it really wide. So if you think about it like that, yes, you're not going to see this black rat snake eat a tiger, but you are going to see them eat pretty good sized animals, maybe even a baby rabbit, young squirrels if they find them. So it is pretty impressive they can eat larger things when you think of it that they have to eat it whole.
Thank you. And we'll do one last question before we move on to our next animal. Cedric, age 8, asks, how do snakes climb trees and not fall?
That's a really good question. Snakes are very strong, very flexible animals. They are extremely muscular. A lot of climbing snakes have something extra as well. They have something on their scales that helps them with that climbing. So they actually have what are known as keeled scales. I don't know that we can get quite that close to see it on this particular snake, but if you looked really closely at this snake's scales, each one has a raised ridge. That is called a keel. And that helps the snake just grip on a little bit tighter to those tree branches. So they are pretty good at climbing without falling. They also have a prehensile tail. That means a grasping tail. Notice how that tail is really well anchored onto Corey's arm right now. So those are some features that climbing snakes tend to have. So they are pretty good at it. I'm not going to say that they never, ever would fall, but they are pretty good at climbing.
And I guess let's do one last thing before we go. What is the snake's name, age, and is it a male or a female?
This snake is a female. It's not very easy to tell from the outside of the snake's body. We were told when we got this individual it was a female, so we kind of took their word for it. Her name is actually Princess, and she is 11 years old. So hopefully she could live 20 years in captivity. So she has many years left in her.
Thank you so much. All right, let's move over to our next animal, and I'm going to share my screen again. Once again, take a picture of this if you want to look up more information about our black rat snake friend while we're getting our other animal ready.
All right, I think we're just about ready for one more misunderstood animal. Now, this is one that people either love or hate. So we'll kind of see what you guys think. I'll have to hear in the questions later if this was one that people love or hate. Now, this is a rat. More specifically, this is a domestic, also known as a fancy rat. Now, that word domestic, it actually means that this is a rat breed that they've been bred by people for thousands of years to live with people as pets. So they're a little bit different than rats you would find out in the wild. Although these domestic or fancy rats actually did originate from rats in the wild. They actually originated from something known as a Norway rat, which despite the name actually originated in China. Not really sure why they're called that. Now, rats originated in China, and they actually moved throughout the world on ships. They were basically stowaways. As people would get on ships and explore, the rats would climb on too, and they actually pretty much expanded their range throughout the world. Rats are arguably one of the most successful mammals. They live on every single continent except Antarctica. That's pretty impressive. So you might think, all right, that's kind of cool that rats are so successful. They're pretty good at surviving, but you might still be thinking they're disgusting. A lot of people think of rats as being in really dirty environments. They think of them as spreading diseases. For the longest time, rats were actually blamed for spreading the bubonic plague, also known as Black Death. This caused millions of people to die in the 14th century, and rats were to blame. That's what many people thought for a really, really long time. Once we learned a little bit more information, we realized it wasn't actually the rats themselves that were spreading this disease. It was fleas on the rats. So they were actually what are known as vectors. They were just carriers of those fleas. Further research, current scientists actually believe that it wasn't even the rats that spread the plague. With how it was spread and how quickly it went, we actually now believe it was really just humans that were those vectors, humans that were spreading that disease. So rats kind of had that bad reputation for a long time, but it wasn't necessarily their fault. Now, a lot of people do still have kind of bad feelings about rats. Often they are pests. They often do come into homes. They do eat food, but you can't really blame the rats for that. Rats are really good at surviving. They can get into really tiny spaces. They can fit into the space about the size of a quarter. So they're really good at getting into tiny spaces, and they're pretty opportunistic. They eat anything you might leave lying around, any food that might be open. So if you do want to avoid having rats potentially as pests in your home, I recommend making sure your home is really sealed up. There's no holes that they can potentially work their way through. And also try to keep food really sealed up and contained to kind of avoid leaving stuff out that rats might be able to get at. And rats as pets often are really enjoyable for people. They're really smart, they're really friendly, they're also pretty clean animals. This rat right here is doing a really great example at cleaning itself. So they kind of have those bad associations with being dirty, carrying diseases, but they are actually pretty friendly, pretty clean animals. So I just recommend you give rats a chance. Now, I'm sure this brought up a lot of questions, so why don't I turn it over to that?
Absolutely, thank you. And these rat friends are just bringing a smile to my face. So thank you for sharing them with us. We had lots of people who loved the rats. So a couple of questions here about what rats eat and are they vegetarians?
They're actually not strict herbivores, so they will eat vegetation definitely, but they're not strict in that. Rats will eat pretty much anything. What Corey just fed them are actually a couple broken up pieces of Cheerios. So they will definitely eat human food. Anything left out, any pet food left out. Here, our rats eat a special diet that's made for rodents kept in captivity. Rats in the wild will eat pretty much anything they find, including dead animals, maybe some insects, definitely fruits and vegetables that they can find. They'll go through garbage and find something. A researcher once did a study to find what the absolute favorite food of rats was, and that food is actually scrambled eggs. So that is the favorite food item of rats, but they're really not picky and will eat just about anything.
Thanks. And Joel, age 9, asks, how big can they get?
These are females. Females are usually a little bit smaller than males. So you might see a male maybe close to 2 times the size. So they don't get crazy big. Typically these domestic or fancy rats, like the kinds people have as pets, are usually a little bit smaller than ones in the wild, but you're not going to see one the size of, a cat or anything like that. So this is pretty much full size for at least these 2 females.
Oh, we have kind of an interesting question here asking if a rat's hand is bigger than a hamster. Is there any comparisons you can do there?
I would say since rats generally are larger animals than hamsters, that their paws probably are a good size bigger. Corey's giving you a pretty good view of those front paws right now. It's been a while since I've seen a hamster's front paws, but I would say they're probably a little bit bigger, although probably not that much because hamsters often can get pretty decent sized as well.
Well, speaking of their hands or paws, Cedric asks, do rats climb?
Rats are really good climbers. They have a lot of climbing structures within their enclosure in our live animal center. For them coming out for a display right now, it's easier to just have them in this case, but they are really good climbers. Those claws help them. They also have those really long tails. That actually really helps with balance. So they can't grab onto something. They don't have a grasping tail like that snake we met before, but they really use those tail for balance. So they are really good at climbing.
All right, and I think one last question and then we'll head out. What are the rats' names? And I think you mentioned that they were both females.
They are both females. The brown rat, her name is Tempest, and then the kind of more colored rat is actually Hanover. So they are cage mates, but they're not siblings. Tempest is actually a little bit older than Hanover, but they get along really well. Rats do tend to be pretty social, so it is nice for them to have a companion.
All right, and I think that is all we have today. So I'll invite you and our rat friends to say goodbye for now.
Bye.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. If you want to look up more information or just take a picture of our cute rats here, you can go ahead and do that. But for now, if you want to see, oh yes, and I think Liz had something else that she wanted to ask all of you.
Yes, thank you for remembering. I didn't know if I should jump back in. We just want to know what you guys at home think are other examples of misunderstood animals. So we only had time to show you 3 today, but what other misunderstood animals can you think of? So maybe think about that for the next week or so.
All right. Thank you so much. Now you can say goodbye.
Bye.
All right. So once again, think of some misunderstood animals that we didn't show you today and prepare those for next week. Once again, go ahead and take a photo of the screen if you'd like to look up more information about our rats. But for now, once again, to check out more live programs, please visit the website mos.org/mos at home, or you can follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed today's presentation, please visit the website engage.mos.org/welcome to support more programs like this one. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time.